Good afternoon. This is Tim Markle. I am the director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs, or out of the Waitsman Center. This is Conversations on Showing Up for Kids, where we try to make an informal space for parents and people that support them to gather and talk about what's happening and what's important in life. I want to remind everybody that I am not a health professional. I am not a lawyer. There is absolutely no medical or legal advice being given. We are just having a conversation. Also want to let people know that this is being recorded. So please avoid the use of any personal identifiable health information or any other personal information that you may not want out on the web, because as we know, nothing ever really goes away on the web. So with that done, today I'm excited to invite, this is so weird. We've been now doing conversations for probably 9 months. And I'm now at the point where it's just like, well, I'd like to welcome back Caroline. But that's where we're at. Is last fall, we had a great conversation with Caroline Rossing about the Wisconsin Statewide Parent Educator Initiative and what they are doing and how they did some pivoting during COVID and just what they're doing and just some really neat stuff. And there was part of that conversation that we didn't get to. And so I wanted to have Caroline back so we could talk about what they're actually doing working with districts to improve family engagement, because family engagement is something that's near and dear to my heart. So Caroline, welcome back, and tell us a little bit about what is WSPEI.
Sure, thank you so much, Tim. So WSPEI, or Wisconsin Statewide Parent Educator Initiative, has been serving families and educators since the year 2000. I apologize for my phone. To support, and we also support families and educators to develop those productive partnerships that are needed to really support the children and the children's learning. We are a special education discretionary grant funded through the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, and we work with and within the 12 cooperative educational service agencies in Wisconsin, or CYSHCN. We have coordinators in each of those CYSHCNs that serve that regional area, and we collaborate statewide through those CYSHCNs.
And I know that, I will definitely refer people back to our talk in the fall to go more in depth. We talked about all sorts of stuff that WSPEI was doing with the different schools and with their coordinators and how that worked. And we'll put up the WSPEI website. You got a lot of cool stuff going on there as well. But we didn't really get a chance to talk too much about your work with family engagement. So I guess one of the questions that I have, I've known you for a little while though, but I mean, schools are for education. And so there's the teachers and there's the therapists and there's the principals, and, families should show up to meet their teachers and be happy that there's an open house, right? I mean, what's this family engagement that you talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I just mentioned earlier, we're working to build those productive partnerships. So we're trying to bridge the relationship between educators and families. Last time I was with you, I talked a lot about how we support families. And today you had asked about, how do we support those educators? And we really have had a type of mindset change to a certain extent, that we've helped families for years and years. And although we help educators with questions over the years, we probably didn't focus on them as much. So there's been a mindset sort of change and a shift. So now we're beginning to work much more with educators to build their capacity to engage families. Like you just mentioned, what's the deal with these families not coming to this open house and that sort of thing. So that's what we're working with on educators, to build their capacity to effectively engage families.
So instead of just telling the families that you need to engage in school more, try and provide that environment where families feel welcome and where there are people that are open to, not just open to court, but wanting to work with the families.
Exactly. So we have a project called Family Engagement Assessment and Planning. And we use Stephen Constantino's 5 principles. And you can find Stephen Constantino out on the website. He's got a website. He wrote the book, Engage Every Family. among some other books. And his 5 principles, the first one is to create the culture that engages each and every family. Second one is around communication and building relationships. The third one's around building that family efficacy. The fourth one is around building a family's efficacy so they can be part of decision-making groups and opportunities to be on decision-making teams meaningfully. And then the fifth one is reaching your greater community. So we help educators to build their capacity, and some of the areas that we do that in include building their capacity to engage with families in conversations about their child's reading and literacy. We know that reading and literacy is a fundamental, foundational piece of education, needs to be in place. So we focus specifically on reading and literacy, where we build the capacity of educators, as well as just around family engagement in general. You know, what is family engagement? How can I build my capacity around family engagement? How can I build those productive partnerships with families to help the students' learning?
Can you give us some examples of what it is that you're telling educators how to improve that capacity and what family engagement is? Because I don't think that a lot of the there's so much that's packed into education these days in training teachers that I don't know how much family engagement training they get. So what sort of things are you talking to educators about to help them learn?
Sure, absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's not a lot of training in family engagement. So we go down to those core basic things of, building that relationship with the family, intentionally reaching out to families, reaching the unreached families that, many times there's educators feel maybe they've reached many of their families, but there's those on the fringe that they consider disengaged. And we talk about that as being the unreached family. So how can you build your capacity, change your family engagement practices to be able to reach each and every family? So again, we go down to those basic pieces that I mentioned before, just building that relationship, having that effective communication. So working on those first. And I would step back a bit. When we do work with these educators and building their capacity, we always start with their beliefs. So what are your beliefs around family engagement? We use the book that was co-authored by Karen Mapp called Powerful Partnerships. And it's a really nice read for educators to dive into about, what do they really believe about building those partnerships? So we work with school teams on this, as well as individual educators to build their capacity. We have rubrics that they can follow, and they can reflect on where they think they started, and maybe after a few months where they're at now. Have they grown in their capacity? As well as we have a number of individual best practice statements that they can reflect on, and if they feel that they need to work on that specific area, they say, yeah, maybe I don't do that as well as I could, right? And we've got resources aligned to that to help them build their capacity, as well as WSPEI is always there. The WSPEI coordinators are always there to coach them along, provide guidance and additional resources and information that they need.
And I love the way that it's set up as a system. It's not just a take this test, look what you're doing well, look what you're not doing well, and darn it all, you should do better in those areas. But hey, let's see what you're doing well. Let's see how we can build on that. And if there's these areas where you would like help on, we're going to provide some resources. We're going to provide some support. We're not just here to say you should do better, but we're here to say, let's do better together. And we're going to show you how. We don't expect you to know what you don't know. And that's, I think that's really important. And that goes back to the mindset too, is teachers and parents don't know what they don't know. And so helping them to see the other side and understand the other side a little bit better can help contribute to that partnership. But I really love what you said about changing the mindset, is just changing the wording from disengaged, which puts the responsibility on the family, to unreached, which puts the responsibility back on the school district. I think that's a really important word change. And I really like that that changing that mindset. That's really important.
Yes, absolutely, Tim. And I think about you, saying, just that bit of a change can change that mindset. And within all these best practices that we work with them on, there are those little changes, right? From deficit-based language to asset-based language. Just those little things can make a big difference. How things are worded, how things are said. As far as like communication, thinking about the verbal, nonverbal, all those types of things, are you really truly communicating and really listening to understand and that sort of thing. I just wanted to touch base a little bit more on past the communication piece and the relationship piece. I talked about that family efficacy piece, and educators building their capacity to build the family's efficacy. So if you're familiar at all with the Department of Public Instruction's College and Career Ready initiative and College and Career Ready IEPs, we also have a number of materials that we work with educators on to build their capacity to engage families, not only in the conversation about College and Career Ready IEPs, but also to be that partner at the table, contribute what they know about their child, because they are the expert on their child. And they're a needed voice at the table of those IEP meetings to develop and implement an IEP effectively that's really truly going to help their child.
Yeah, I love that. I love the seeing the central role that the parent doesn't have a central role, the educator doesn't have a central role. The central role is what comes when they're combined around that child, is that they're partners in that IEP, is they own that together. And so getting the most information you can is going to make a more successful IEP, is going to help that child succeed and thrive in school better than if you just have one point of view. Is that other point of view helps to round it out and helps to give that fullness to the IEP. So that I love that point. I think that's really important.
Yeah, thank you. Another thing I'd like to mention is, I don't know if the audience or you are familiar with special education indicators, but at the Department of Public Instruction, there's a number of special education indicators that are targets for what they would like to see as far as growth and supporting child's educational experiences adequately, right? So the one indicator that WSPEI helps support is the Federal Indicator 8. And that is around family engagement. That survey is sent to families every 5 years from a district. So we use that data too when we are working with educators to reflect on this data. It's perception data from families. But we know how important that is, right? Educators can think maybe they're implementing a certain practice and it seems like it works right, it works really good. But until they really know the whole story from the family, they don't really know for sure, right? So we also support that piece of that data collection around family perceptions.
All right, so we have this background, we have this the foundation of what you're trying to do. Can you quickly walk us through, how are schools or districts getting involved? Do you just work with the district level? Do you work on the individual school level? What's their what sort of commitment do they then give to work with WSPEI on this? What are some of the nuts and bolts of how this program works?
Sure. So our coordinators that I spoke about earlier all have relationships built in their CSAs with special education directors within the districts. And so what we did is we provide a stipend to district teams that want to engage in this process of building their capacity, building the capacity of those individual educators, but also as a team and looking maybe like school-wide. improving practices and making them more systemic in the future, always kind of envisioning that systemic change, right? From maybe individuals to maybe a focus area in a school to maybe school-wide and then district-wide. So we provide them a stipend to work with our WSPEI coordinators who provide the resources, information, the coaching, to be able to work through what I mentioned before, like a rubric, right? Where we have the different principles that I mentioned from Stephen Constantino, and within those we have different objectives they can look at. And then from that objective, we have those best practice statements. So they work through individually and then more than likely at either a focus area or a school-wide focus. And I wanted to mention too, one of the specific projects within this family engagement assessment and planning that we've just started with for about a year now is a home visit program, and helping those schools get educators trained, form a team, and work on implementing home visits in their school. They typically start with a focus area, but again, we want to look at that systemic change in the future. So we're always envisioning that. And we've seen success with this, and we are working with a nationally recognized organization, Parent Teacher Home Visit Project, on this. They have come in and will be coming in again to do a training that educators can attend to get those basic fundamental pieces of, how do I conduct a home visit? How do I plan in my district to make it sustainable, that kind of thing. And then WSPEI comes in and supports that and brings in our family engagement piece of it to kind of build upon this home visit and help educators be more effective with their home visits.
So you've had a couple parts of the plan in place for a little while. Do you have any, it might be too early, but do you have any sort of high points, success stories, highlights, changes that have been made or improvements that have been made in family engagement because of the work that you've been doing so far? And like I said, I know it's still early in the project, but I'm just wondering if any of those highlights have come forth yet.
Yep. So yeah, I would say it is still early. And last year, because of COVID-19, we kind of had to stop, right, in April.
Well, that would put COVID definitely would put a little halt to family visiting. Home visiting probably slowed down, like till none.
Right, exactly. But what we do emphasize with these home visits is a virtual home visit. Parent Teacher Home Visits Project, who we use to do the training, calls them bridge visits. So that's what we're really focusing on, is this virtual visit. And part of that stipend that we provide, provides for the time for the educators to actually engage in this, but it can also provide for like any technology that might be needed or an interpreter that might be needed. So you can get that, have that effective communication, because especially with virtual home visits, right? The families have to be able to get on a Zoom format like this and that sort of thing. And I think I've forgotten what question you asked me when I went up kind of on this tangent.
That's okay. I asked you a question that I didn't tell you that I was going to ask. And that was knowing that it's early, the problem, if there were any, highlights or any changes that you've seen occur in schools or districts, with the acknowledgement that it's very early in the program. But if there was some sort of highlight, just want to give you a chance to point that out.
So I would say that our coordinators have noticed mind shifts on the part of the teams they're working with, which is a plus, a big plus, right?
It's huge.
We just received a testimonial from a teacher that we're supporting as they're implementing these home visits, a great testimonial about how effective that home visit was and how much she wants to continue using this and share this information with her other colleagues about how effective this home visit can be. Through the Parent Teacher Home Visits Project, their framework for home visits is all about building that relationship initially, which is what might have been missed many times in the past. If educators have gone in to do a home visit, it may have been around more academic type issues or supports, where this is all about getting to know the family, building that relationship, building that trust. And we're really looking forward to where this goes in the next couple of years, and looking forward to more and more districts becoming involved in this project program.
So we're going to get to how they might be able to do that in the future, but we do have a question in the chat box that I would like to ask. Have you seen COVID make family and educator engagement more strained? How's COVID changed the engagement?
Yeah, so from what we've heard, I think it can be both ways. We've heard many incidences and kind of testimonials even from educators on how much it's changed, how much they communicate with the family. They feel they're communicating more. They feel the relationships are better because of COVID-19, because they were able to communicate, and they had to communicate, right, to support that child's learning at home. I think there's probably other instances where maybe it hasn't gone as well, right? If the child's not progressing with the curriculum, it's been a difficult situation in the virtual environment, and maybe the family just hasn't reached out in meaningful ways, or not the family, excuse me, the educator hasn't reached out in meaningful ways to really involve the family in the child's education and be that person at home that supports that. So I think it varies depending on the individual family student. But I've heard both sides of the coin, that there's been really good instances and there's some that haven't been so good.
Well, thank you. And for those people that have joined us live, please feel free to continue to use the chat box responses. This is what we have had significant more difficulties, more because of not understanding parents aren't able to always support children. Is that there's a capacity issue. Is when there's more significant difficulties, is sometimes that school played a really important role in supporting that family and supporting that kiddo. And when it feels like it all falls back onto the family, it could get really tiring. So it's hard. It's hard for the teachers and it's hard for the parents. There's just no doubt about it.
Exactly. And that's exactly why, we look back to what we're to do, I guess, or support educators to do, is build their capacity, especially at these crucial times during COVID-19, when a lot of the weight was on the families and it became very difficult. Again, building that relationship with the family, build that trust so they know that you're there and you can help in the ways needed. You can collaborate and talk about ways how you can work together to help the situation. Many times, again, it's just about that family knowing that there's someone there that's kind of a lifeline, right? That they're going to be there no matter what to help me. I know this is really tough, but my child's teacher is there, and they will work through this with me. That's so important to build those relationships with families and have families know that.
And I'm hoping one of the changes that I've heard that parents have talked to me about that will hopefully be able to continue post-COVID is that it seems like some schools or districts have, I don't want to say relaxed the rules, but encouraged more of this personal interaction with families. Have realized that we're going to be better educators if we understand our families better, and if we're in relationships with our families better, and if we've left barriers between the child and the educators, and the child and the therapists, and the family and the therapist. So sort of hopefully this a little bit of opening of that communication can become the normal way of doing business, that parents can communicate with the teacher, parents can communicate with the therapist can communicate with the teacher, that some of the barriers maybe will be able to be removed and stay down. That's my hope, and a couple of families have expressed that as well.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. I think about silos, right? When you're talking about that and how we want to break down those silos, and we want, again, it takes us back to that capacity building for educators to really build that relationship with the family, get to know what's working at home, what's working in the community, what other connections they have in the community, whether it be to individuals or organizations that can help to inform what they do at school so they can best support that child. I'd also make a mention of the fact that, many times if the family's able to more easily, those relationships are built more easily, right? Those families that are easy to engage with. So let's not forget about all the families. Let's forget about those unreached families where you may have to take different steps, use different practices. You may have to shift your mindset a bit to really truly reach those families and build relationships with each and every family.
And based on comment in the chat box, and the person writes, I think the special education teacher is a great relationship. However, kind of feeling we can't help our son be successful in his regular education classrooms has been deflating. And so this project is working with the whole school, not just the special educators, but trying to make that personalized education part of every child's education portfolio where it's needed. Is not just saying, this is what we offer, parents deal with it, either accept it, take it, don't, but saying, you know what, we can't deal with every family the same way. Is we need to take an individualized approach to education, even outside of special education and IEPs. Or have I just totally misspoken about the program?
No, not at all. Because we are funded through special education, obviously we have to be focusing on students with IEPs. But we consider students with IEPs general education students first. They are a general education student. Look more of it like a continuum of students, right? And they all need certain supports to achieve and be successful. And part of what we work with absolutely is all staff, not only special ed teachers, general ed teachers, but also the office secretary, the custodian, the bus driver. We have a number of areas in these rubrics that we use with educators, right? That speaks to that the whole school is there to support all families, including families of students with IEPs. So also getting that staff, right, to communicate effectively about students, because they need that collaboration again and that information to effectively support not only the student, but the family.
Well, and I think of the fact that there is some sort of specialized training that goes into being a special education or cross-categorical, educator that actually does focus a little bit on family engagement and listening to the family, and you have the chance to cooperate with those families around the IEP. And then we sit there and say, but our goal isn't, one of our goals for most of our kiddos is the least restrictive environment. So that means inclusion. And so that means they're having contact with these regular education teachers or people that have not had that specialized knowledge or that specialized training or that exposure. And so being able to look at the school as this unit that all parts of it are supporting each student, I think is really important to acknowledge that it's not just, it's not that we have teachers out there that don't want to, they just don't know how. They've never really been taught or emphasized because things have radically changed in the last 15 years.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what we hope to make inroads on, right? With our family engagement, educator capacity building support, is not only gaining the knowledge that they need, but learning how to effectively communicate with the families, with the student, with their colleagues at school to best support all those students and their families. Yeah, and like we mentioned in the beginning, typically pre-service teachers, typically there's not training around family engagement, how to build relationships. And we realize they have a lot of things on their plate. But our feeling is that this family engagement piece is a underlying foundational piece to success. You know, you can be doing a lot of things, educating the student, but you may not be utilizing all the information you have. You may not be seeing the whole picture to really understand the whole child in order to really truly support that child to be as successful as possible.
So in the comment box, we have, I'm very excited to see more information about family and community involvement in the IEPs. That's definitely, I know that's been a push. So the school has more awareness of what supports the family does have and what the student may be involved in outside the educational arena. Again, this whole acknowledgement that this child is a child 24/7, but he's a student, you know, for these hours during the day. I mean, always a student, but you know what I'm poorly trying to say. So yeah, I agree that this is one of those foundational elements of education, is connecting with the family. So let's say someone listens to this recording, or someone who's listening to us live right now says, wow, this is so cool. Is there an opportunity for them to get involved with WSPEI with that? Do they have to wait for an enrollment period? Do they need to convince their special education director? How can they start to utilize some of this information in their schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, yes, going back to your school and saying, hey, I was on a webinar with Tim Markle and I heard all about what WSPEI can do and how it can support that relationship building so families can be meaningful partners, not only in their child's education, but in like school improvement and that sort of thing. Just for creation of awareness too, right? We don't know how many educators know completely about WSPEI and what we can provide to them. So anytime a family may hear about us, or know more or learn more about us, certainly, I mean, that's a great opportunity to go back and share with your child's teacher, caseworker, the special education director. Hey, they're doing some really cool things. Are you guys aware of what WSPEI can do? And maybe that would really help our school to improve.
I like that approach of, you know, this is something that we can do together. There's an organization that wants to work with us together to make our school a better place, to make our school a better school. Help all the kids to be educated in a safe environment.
Yeah, and I think probably last time when we talked a bit more about, you know, how we support families, and not only just WSPEI, but there's a number of those statewide organizations in Wisconsin that support families and are there with information and resources. And that's another part of our work, is ensuring that when those educators are building their capacity, that they're gaining understanding of all those other community partners, whether they be statewide, regional, local, that can assist and help and support the success of the child.
Yeah, one of my biggest heartaches, so to speak, it's a little heartache, but still a heartache, is when I have parents or educators come and say, wow, I wish I had known about this when. Knowing that these resources are out there, but that not all of our families or educators are connecting to them. And they're here. There is a good amount of support available. There is help available. There are the regional centers. There's WSPEI. There's Wisconsin Facets. There's some other awesome parts of the special education team at DPI. There's Wisconsin Family Ties. There's a number of then individual support organizations according to diagnosis. And there's some help out there, but it doesn't do any good if people don't know about it. So I appreciate you coming on and helping share a little broader about what WSPEI's vision is and how they feel they fit into helping improve family engagement across Wisconsin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim.
Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
As we were speaking on this last piece here, I was just thinking about family opportunities too. You know, absolutely, they hear about WSPEI or another statewide organization, going back, sharing that information with their school. But another program, which I believe I touched on last time we met, was our district family engagement liaison program. So WSPEI also trains and mentors district family engagement liaisons. It's a great leadership opportunity for family members. That individual is identified by the special education director in the district. So it's another opportunity, right, to help with that communication flow from what like WSPEI's doing, other statewide agencies, and kind of bring it back to your school. The school determines the ultimate and more specific role that that district family engagement liaison plays, but it's certainly about sharing information that we talked about, you know, just in the past few minutes, how important that awareness piece is.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and to the people that have been putting into the chat, I appreciate the interaction. It's nice to know sometimes that we're not just talking to each other out here alone. So, you know, knowing that other people will watch this, but it's really cool having that interaction as well. So we're really glad that you are here as well. So Caroline, thank you so much. If just give me a minute, I'm going to stop the recording and then we could just continue with our thanks. Okay, so hang on 1 second.
All right, thank you.